Today, we wanted to show you how to make a great Thai dish from the Yunnan province, Sapie rice noodle dip. Now, this is really one of those things that's more of a category of meal than a dish per se. What you're looking at is some rice noodles topped with a few accompaniments and served alongside what makes this dish, the dipping sauce. This particular dipping sauce we made here is called Ningmeng Sa. It's loaded with lime, chili, and a mix of herbs, but know that this one's far from the only one. See, if you go to South Yunnan and find yourself at a Thai restaurant, probably the most classic dip would be something called Kusa. The stuff's made from a base of dried and powdered beef bile and is brazenly bitter. It's actually pretty great, but predictably one of the more challenging things we've ever eaten. The lime version's a lot more approachable, and, we figured that powdered beef bile might be on the hard-to-source side for a lot of you anyhow. But regardless, to get started with your rice noodle dip, you'll need rice noodles. Today, we'll be using 250 grams of dried Vietnamese-style rice noodles. Why Vietnamese? In Yunnan, they eat this with freshly made mì xiên rice noodles. These guys can be tough to find, though, even in China. So after a bit of testing, we settled on the Vietnamese sort. They're ever so slightly thicker, but still totally work. So get a pot of water up to a boil and toss in your dried rice noodles. Cook according to your package, but start tasting them at around the 5-minute mark because a lot of packages seem to love to overshoot. Then take them out, transfer over to a sink, rinse to stop the cooking process, and set those aside. Now for the sauce. To make this, you'll need 1 large lime, a few fresh chilies, these were heaven-facing chilies, but you could also use Thai bird's eye, and the herbs. Now some versions can really get quite complex here, so know that we've already boiled this down to the absolutely essential components. This uses 70 grams of jiu-tsai Chinese chives, and if you can't find these, don't make this dish, make something else, I guess. You'll also need 20 grams of sawtooth coriander, also super important, so if you can't find that, make something else, and 25 grams of laksa leaf, also no sub, so you get the idea. Now finally mince your jiu-tsai Chinese chives, first chopping off the tough pale end. You've really got to get this super fine, so use a sharp knife and take your time with it. In Yunnan, they've actually got a special contraption for just this chore. Then, toss in a bowl and add in a teaspoon of salt. Mix well, and let it sit for at least 20 minutes. After that time, the jiu-tsai's released a bit of its liquid, so finish the job by tossing into a tofu or cheesecloth and squeezing for about a minute. This process mellows out the pungent spiciness of the jiu-tsai, the end result being called jiu-tsai sheng. So now finally mince the sawtooth coriander, pick the laksa leaves and do the same, and slice the chilies into about 2mm pieces. Toss that all together, and we'll prep the next critical ingredient for the sauce, raw beef. You heard that right. Raw beef loin is a fundamental component here. You'll want the freshest beef you can possibly get, but because we do live in the city, we'll first sear the outside of our 150 grams of tenderloin. This was in a dry wok over high heat. The method here isn't traditional in the slightest, but just our personal approach. See, the bits that are most likely to get you sick are the parts of beef that have been exposed to air. So we just cook that part, let it rest much like a steak, and cut away the cooked portion. After slicing, you should be looking at about 50 to 75 grams of raw beef, but don't toss that excess. We took that back to a lightly oiled hot wok, laid them in seared side up, and fried those over medium heat for about 1 to 2 minutes until cooked through. This was our quick sub for what would usually be served alongside this, Ningmeng Sa, slowly smoked beef jerky. So we know that our seared beef is totally inauthentic, but Ningmeng Sa takes like multiple days to make, we don't own a smoker, and this dish is really all about the sauce anyhow. So back to the raw beef. Use the back of a knife and start pounding it to break it down. You want to use the backside because as you go, you'll need to pick out those white stringy membranes, and they're a nightmare to cut out. So this will take a while, about 10 minutes, but after that, we're good to assemble. So to your beef, toss in your herbs and chilies together with 1 teaspoon salt, a half teaspoon sugar, a quarter teaspoon MSG, a half teaspoon of chili powder, preferably a smoked one, and a good handful of toasted sesame seeds. Then toss in 50 milliliters of freshly squeezed lime juice and 150 milliliters of water. Give it a good mix, and we can serve. Now, as the sauce sits, the lime juice will start to cook the beef much in the same way it does ceviche, so don't wait too long. Toss on your cooked rice noodles, some sort of vegetable. Here we used 50 grams of shredded cabbage, the seared beef and or Ningmeng Sa smoked jerky, and optionally a touch of mint. And with that, your Ningmeng Sa is done. To eat then, first take a bit of the hottest chili you can possibly source and dip it in the sauce. This was a zunyi chili. In Yunnan, they use something called xuan la, and a habanero should work great as well. Grab some noodles and some toppings, give them a good dip in the sauce, and devour.
So right, Sapie kind of means mixing things together in Thai language. So besides like beef or lemon, there's also fish like Yusa, eggplant, 茄子 sa. It's one of my personal all-time favorite dishes. So I really hope you can give it a try if you can get the sourcing headache sorted. So check out the other link in the description box for a detailed recipe. A big thank you for everyone that's supporting us on Patreon. And of course, subscribe for more Chinese cooking videos.